Geoffrey Chaucer was an English poet and author, widely considered the greatest English poet of the Middle Ages. He is best known for the Canterbury Tales. He has been called the father of English literature, or alternatively, the father of English poetry. Geoffrey Chaucer was born in London roughly between the time of 1340 to 1344 to John and Agnes Chaucer. His parents were wealthy wine merchants who were successful and had many connections in society. London at this time was a prosperous and thriving city which welcomed many opportunities to Chaucer. Unfortunately, around 1348, the infamous Black Plague started to wipe out cities and towns, so the Chaucer family moved to Southampton. While in Southampton, Chaucer would have been around the age to receive schooling, but there are no records that a formal education took place. Since he came from a family of wealth, it would be a possibility that Chaucer was homeschooled or had a private tutor. His love of reading also enhanced his reading and intellect, so much so that he became almost fluent in Italian, Latin, and French. Regardless, Geoffrey Chaucer received a stellar education and was transformed into a gentleman that was received well by society. In 1357, Chaucer was first noted as being a member of the house of the Countess of Ulster Elizabeth. He was right where he needed to be in terms of age and success. Chaucer held this position in order to receive an education in the royal court system. After doing this for a few years, he served under Edward III in the army and was captured, but later returned for ransom. It was sometime around 1360 when Chaucer, who was about 20 years old, began writing and translating poetry quite often. The royal court was a big fan of the arts and encouraged Chaucer's writing in not only English but other languages such as French and Italian. Over the next few years, there was much peace in Europe, so Chaucer traveled abroad occasionally for business pertaining to the royal court. These trips heightened his imagination and reality of the world. A year later, Chaucer met Philippa de Rode and they were married. He married into a higher class and because of this was later named as one of the king's esquires. In his 30s, Chaucer started traveling again, at first doing business for the king and later for two merchants trading Italian goods. While one of his trips to Italy, he got his hands on the famous writer Boccaccio's work, which was most likely his inspiration to write the Canterbury Tales. Boccaccio's work consisted of many small, interrelated tales focused around one significant occasion, which was the theme in the tales. The beginning of the 1370s was a time for change in Chaucer's life. First off, the royal court started to credit and recognize his literature. Better yet, since his writing was so impressive, the king awarded him a pitcher of wine daily, and later he was chosen to be controller of customs in the port of London for skins, hides, and wools. While Chaucer held that prestigious position, his poetry was becoming very well known and greatly improving. Some of his work during this decade included parts of the Canterbury Tales, such as the Second Nun Tale and the Night Tale. One of the main writing techniques Chaucer used was blending old literature with his new modern ideas. In the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer thought up characters that the average person could easily relate to. By doing this, he grabbed the attention of the vast majority of the population and not just the upper class. He also created his stories with pleasant, fresh, and happy plots and thoughts, unlike normal Middle Ages literature, always been portrayed as dark and gloomy with constant war. Chaucer was creative, and by making his work upbeat and fun, he enticed more audience, and poetry became an enjoyable read. This stuck with literature through the centuries, and to this day, we find fun and lively stories full of life and drama everywhere. Chaucer's style of writing started a new trend of storytelling, poetry, and literature as a whole. At the end of 1399, he leased out a tenement in Westminster Abbey. October 25th, 14,000 is believed to be the date of his death, and he was buried in Westminster Abbey with a small, very modest funeral. Since he was a man of much honor and respect, in 1556 his body was moved to a new place, but his old burial place in Westminster is now called Poets' Corner. While he was alive, his works were greatly appreciated and never underestimated. People of his time knew that he was creating great works of literature, and he was, in a way, considered famous. Geoffrey Chaucer gave literature the Canterbury Tales, which will live on in English literature and will always have a great influence on modern writing for the rest of the time. Thank you.